Yeah, I'll tell you something that is very clear. It's clear that this about to be recognized House Christian terrorist majority, they still call themselves Republicans, will try to use extortion to get all kinds of concessions from Democrats. Now, here's another example. You know, the debt limit, the national debt limit is coming up soon. When is it? I'm not exactly sure, but every year the national debt limit has to be raised in order to satisfy our global obligations, right? At least that's the way the capitalist manipulators have set it up. And what the Republicans are going to do, they'll focus on refusing to raise the nation's borrowing limit in order to get deep spending cuts. Now, where do you suppose those spending cuts are going to come? Well, McCarthy and the rest of these slime have already made it clear. They want to cut into Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, public education, public health, all of those aspects of self-government that are designed to keep us healthy, educated, keep us going. But the Christian demons don't want that. They want everybody to be absolutely fucking dependent on this sick goddamn religion of theirs for everything. Food, clothing, shelter, medical care, whatever it is. None of which they're capable of delivering. Christians can't do this shit. All Christians can do is walk around condemning everybody else. Now, okay, I know what you're saying. Well, Mike, what about all these hospitals that are run by Christian organizations? Okay, they're run by Christian organizations, but if you went a little bit deeper and found a bunch of Christian activists, one of the first things they would do would be to suggest cutting back on any kind of social advancement that we have, the progress that we have made over the past 85, 90 years. They don't like it. It diverts attention from the suffering of their Lord and Savior. Senator John Thune. He is a Republican of South Dakota, top Senate Republican. He has already said that the Christian Terrorist Party will use the debt limit to seek cuts in what these fuckers call entitlements. You know, if you don't pay into Social Security, if you don't pay into this stuff, you're not going to get anything. Okay, maybe there is a minimal level. If you never pay anything into it, you might get, what, $200 a month? I don't even know how that works, frankly. But they're not entitlements. This is what people have earned over their working lives. So John Thune, this rotten son of a bitch, said this week that if Republicans withhold support for raising the debt limit, which, by the way, would threaten default by the U.S. government, economic disaster. How many times do these Christian blackmailers use this threat? How many times, huh? But if they do it, according to Thune, it would increase pressure on Democrats to, quote, deliver, that's his word, on raising Social Security retirement age. And that is pretty ominous threat coming from this fucker who happens to be third in line in the Republican Party. He's the GOP whip. Now, this is a sad thing about Democrats. This is why I could no longer stand to be a registered Democrat. Because the reason to be skeptical that Democrats will use this lame duck session that we're in right now to protect the country from the damage that these fuckers like John Thune could unleash. Senate Republicans, we've been told all our lives, are supposed to be the sober ones relative to the House Republicans. But if such threats from a Republican leader in the Senate aren't enough to get Democrats to act, what's it going to take? The Democrats have a month, one fucking month in this lame duck session to eliminate the threat of debt limit extortion. But according to Greg Sargent, who's writing at the Washington Post, he says that this whole idea did not get talked about in a meeting 2 days ago between Biden and congressional leaders. Nancy Pelosi told reporters after the meeting, quote, "That didn't come up," end quote. That didn't come up. Well, I would agree with Greg Sargent. That's not exactly encouraging. Representative Brendan Boyle, he's a Democrat from Pennsylvania, who has long argued for dealing with the debt limit. Now, get it done. Brendan Boyle told Greg Sargent, quote, "I'm extremely concerned. We must do this now. If we don't, we'll come to deeply regret it," end quote. In spades, pal. Now, yes, as Greg Sargent points out, securing lame duck action on the debt limit would be a challenge. First, there is already a ton of things to do, from fixing the Electoral Count Act of 1887 to prevent future coups to funding the entire government. Second, action to do this would require either Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell on one side or Senators Joe Manchin, that prick, and Kristen Sinema, that bitch, on the other side, to play against their type, what they've already said they will not do, in a very dramatic way. So once again, the Democrats in the Senate desperately need help from these two, Sinema and Manchin. Greg says, let's start with McConnell. Democrats would like him to agree to raise the debt limit during the lame duck session on a bipartisan basis. The hope has been that McConnell would want to do this so he doesn't have to raise the debt limit later when the Trump firebrands in the House and Senate are demanding maximal weaponization of the whole idea. You know, that's what the Christians do. They turn something that is an absolute requirement in order to maintain the what's the word I'm looking for? The balance of the U.S. government, the liquidity of the U.S. government. In other words, to make sure we keep going. But the Christian demons don't want it to keep going. Anything these Christian demons can do to collapse the government. You saw on January 6th, anything they can do. And if it means using a simple thing like extending the debt limit so that we can continue, the Christian demons will try to crash it there. Any place they can get their fucking talons into, they will try to bring it down. Now, as far as McConnell, there's no indication that McConnell's willing to do this. He did cave in the last debt limit showdown last year. But according to Greg Sargent, he seemingly only did so after he could argue that he had run out of other options and default loomed. Well, that wouldn't apply here. No, it wouldn't. Without McConnell, disabling this debt limit extortion would require Democrats to use a simple majority reconciliation process. And all 50 Democratic senators could raise the debt limit well beyond what it will need to reach during the rest of Biden's presidency. Pregnancy? Of course. Presidency. So it would take all 50 Democrats to do this. Not the new ones, the new Democrat. Yeah, we're going to have 52 seats in the Senate after January 3rd or 8th, whenever they take their seats. But we're talking about now. So all 50 Democratic senators would be needed. And you can just smell the stench already coming from Manchin as he starts scratching his armpits and thinking about his crotch and thinking about what he can extort from ostensibly his political party in order to get his vote. And Kristen Sinema's doing the same thing out in the desert, right? Democratic aides said they'd be skeptical that Manchin and Sinema would be willing to raise the debt limit through reconciliation because that would be partisan. Oh, my God. Yeah. Yeah, it would be. Manchin and Sinema have got to be so fucking brain warped. I mean, they really do. Where do they think they live? I mean, in this country, what are they? Are they blind to the political reality? Are they deaf to the screeches from the neo-Nazis and the MAGA crowd and the Trump scum? Do they not hear that? Have they not seen members of their own body refuse to convict a fucking criminal like Donald Trump? Partisan? Using reconciliation to get this done would be considered partisan to these freaks? Manchin and Sinema? So, given what Manchin and Sinema did during the first 2 years of the Biden presidency over and over and over again, it would take a fool to think that these two, Manchin and Sinema, would be willing to raise the debt limit through reconciliation. It's just not going to happen. Just not going to happen. So, as Greg Sargent points out, it's looking increasingly unlikely that Democrats will defuse the debt limit time bomb before the next Congress takes over. And you may get the sense that Democrats don't feel all that urgent about this because of their reading of the politics of it. And what are the politics? Well, some Democrats are already hinting that they really are looking forward to gleefully a showdown with Republicans over these efforts to use the debt ceiling to cut entitlements. I kind of hope that too. I mean, I really do, because I don't know how else to expose to older Americans who, for some god-awful reason, continue to vote Republican, what's at stake for them, for their pocketbooks. When these Christian demons talk about cutting entitlements, they're talking about reaching into the money that retired people have and snatching it away from them. So maybe it needs to go to a complete showdown so that these older Americans can wake the fuck up. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.